Welcome back to my channel. My name is Ann. We are still in a shelter-in-place order in San Francisco, but we can get out and exercise, and I really needed to take a walk. So I decided I would take a walk along Market Street and share some of San Francisco's history with you. I am starting here at the Ferry building. I did a video about the Ferry building. It was one of the very first videos on this channel. And it's got its own stories to tell. So if you're interested in that, please check out that video. During the gold rush, Market Street was described as an arrow aimed straight at the heart of Los Pechos de la Chola, the breasts of the maiden. It's what we now call Twin Peaks. I don't think I will ever be able to look at those hills the same way. Market Street runs down the center of San Francisco, and it divides it essentially. To the south is the Mission. It's also called Soma, south of Market. And the streets run in a grid-like pattern, what you would expect from a city. To the north of Market Street is called San Francisco. And the streets run off Market Street at an angle rather than a square grid. And that was to accommodate the topology of the area. This area during the weekends is filled with San Francisco artisans who sell their custom-made goods, which could be jewelry, leather goods, photographs, artwork, all kinds of things. This entire area is filled every weekend. And that market continues all the way down from the Ferry building until we get here, Robert Frost Plaza. This is a monument to poet Robert Frost. He was a very famous poet, and he was born here in San Francisco. He lived here for about 6 years, and then his family moved back east. So San Francisco can claim his youth, but really not much else. Now, I'm not a huge fan of poetry, but Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken, has kind of been a beacon for me my entire life. I heard it when I was, I think a freshman in college, and the words really resonated with me, and that has made all the difference. There's also this really cool clock. I couldn't find any information about it, so maybe it's just a clock, but I think it's really cool. And this is also the start of the California line. So if you are in San Francisco and you're looking for the cable car experience, this might be a good place to come. The lines are usually shorter. You can sit outside in both the front and the back of the car, and you can get off at Nob Hill and explore up there, or get off at Chinatown. This is One Pine Plaza. There's nothing really historical about this area. It's, I love this sculpture, and you can come up and sit on it if you want. The next landmark I want to point out is the Path of Gold street lamps. These were created as part of the City Beautiful movement of the late 19th and early 20th century. That movement said that beautification of the city improves quality of life. Critics of the movement called them an architectural design cult and said they sacrificed functionality for aesthetics. In this case, I don't think it's true, because the street lamps are absolutely beautiful. They have been painted over a number of times, so you are going to have some trouble seeing the details. But in this case, there are 3 levels, and on each 3 of these tiers, you have a different relief. The bottom tier shows the settlers arriving in covered wagons. The second tier shows mountain lions, and the third tier alternates between Indians and prospectors. It's called this Path of Gold street lights because they emanate a gold light, and they run through almost the entire length of Market Street. This is Mechanics Monument Plaza, which was built as part of the City Beautiful movement. In 1890, James Mervyn Donahue, a wealthy businessman, passed away, and in his will, he bequeathed $25,000 to build a community fountain in memory of his late father. He's like a lot of very wealthy people today. In his will, he dispersed his entire estate mostly to charity, but he did bequeath some money to family members, but none of them was to his wife. Now, at first glance, it might seem like that's kind of cruel, but it really wasn't, because he had already provided for her. He had given her an interest in a building that he owned, so she would be making $900 a month for the rest of her life. Now, $900 a month in 1890 is about $25,000 a month in today's dollars, so he was very generous to her. Nevertheless, she wasn't having any of this excluded from the will business, so she contested the will, and specifically she contested having this monument built. She lost, so a competition was held to find a sculptor, and Douglas Tilden was selected. Douglas Tilden is a very well-known California sculptor, and he was a very interesting guy. We're going to be talking about him a little bit more later on. But he built this sculpture as an homage to J. Mervyn Donohue's father, who made his fortune in California as the state's first iron works and machine shop. This is an oversized punch press with 5 nearly naked men struggling to operate it, and it was unveiled in 1901. So in 1901, how do you think the good and decent people of San Francisco reacted to a statue showing 5 nearly naked men? Yeah, it didn't go over so well. So there was a lobby to try to get the sculptor to put pants on these guys. Obviously that failed, but the fountain is no longer there. It is now just the sculpture, but it's pretty fantastic. One of the things I really like about Mechanics Plaza is they have these kiosks set up that have old maps dating back to 1853 and old photographs of this area and the monument from before the 1906 earthquake, right after the 1906 earthquake. Everything around here was totally decimated and fell to the ground. It's pretty devastating to see it. And then the years after that. So it's pretty cool to take a look at all of these photographs and see the history of this area. This is One Bush Plaza, also known as the Crown Zellerbach building. Construction started on this building in 1957 and was finished in 1959. It was the first major building constructed in San Francisco since the Great Depression. Now remember, the Great Depression was in 1929, so 30 years later. The building literally turned its back on Market Street. The back of the building is over here on Market Street. The front of the building is on Bush Street. The building features this sunken area that you can't see from the street. It is a Japanese-inspired garden, and it features this fantastic abstract fountain, which unfortunately, because everything is shut down in San Francisco, it's not operating right now. There is also this gorgeous sculpture called Woman in Bronze. This is San Francisco's Flatiron building. This high-rise of 10 stories tall was built in 1913. It's actually one of many Flatiron buildings in San Francisco because so many of the streets head off Market Street at an angle. Now, do you know why they're called Flatiron buildings? No, it is not because there was an architect named Mr. Flatiron. It's because the shape of the building resembles a flat iron clothes iron. Behind me is the Admissions Day monument. This was an earlier sculpture by Douglas Tilden, and it was the piece that got him the commission for the Mechanics Monument. At the bottom is a boy holding an American flag and a pickaxe over his shoulder, and at the top is an angel holding an open book with the date September 9th, 1850, which is the day California, was admitted into the Union as a state, hence the Admissions Day monument. I told you earlier that Douglas Tilden was an interesting guy. He contracted scarlet fever at the age of 4 that left him as deaf and mute for his entire life, but still, he did amazing things with his life. There's a story that while he was working on the Mechanics Monument, he had forgotten his key, and when he got home to his in-laws' house, he climbed in through the window. So there was a new servant who thought this was very bizarre behavior, and it kind of scared him, so he locked Tilden in his room. Now, if you're locked in your room, what do? You're going to call for help. But he is deaf, he's mute, he can't call for help. So he starts banging on the walls and the furniture to try and get someone's attention to get him unlocked. This scared the servant so much more that he called the police, and the next day, this is the headline that was in the paper. I have a link to this article in the description below, but the article for this story bears no resemblance to the story that I just told you, so who knows what really happened. This is Lotta's fountain. It was gifted to the city of San Francisco by actress Lotta Crabtree in 1875. Now, Lotta was an incredibly interesting woman. She started singing and dancing in saloons during the gold rush era in the mining camps when she was like 9 or 10. By the time she was 12, her mother was her business manager. When she was 16, she headed east to appear on Broadway, and when she was 20, she was a national star. At 28, she owned her own theater company and was touring the U.S., sometimes making as much as $5,000 a week. $5,000 a week in 1880 is about $100,000 a week today. So she was an incredibly wealthy woman, and this was her gift to San Francisco. This fountain survived the 1906 earthquake, and it became a meeting point where families were trying to connect with each other. I have one more story to tell you about this fountain. Back in the early 20th century, Louisa Tetrazzini, who was a very famous opera singer, wanted to sing in San Francisco, but Oscar Hammerstein of Rodgers and Hammerstein wanted her to sing in New York. He had a contract for her, and he took her to court and won. She could not do the concert here in San Francisco. So she didn't take to that too well. So she held a press conference and said, if I can't do a concert in San Francisco, I will sing on the streets for free. So on Christmas Eve in 1910, Market Street was blocked to all traffic. The streetcars were stopped. A stage was set up right over here with a 50-person orchestra. And Louisa Tetrazzini took to the stage and she sang. Now this was 1910, just 4 years after the earthquake. So San Francisco was still healing, and this was a fantastic gift for them. One last piece of trivia. Chicken Tetrazzini is named after Louisa Tetrazzini. Behind me is a sculpture by Stephen DeStabler called the Market Street Angel. I could find no more information about this than that. It appeared here one day about 20 years ago, and it's been here ever since. This is the Flood Building. The Flood Building housed the Pinkerton Detective Agency, which is where American novelist Dashiell Hammett worked in the early 20th century. Dashiell Hammett is best known for his hard-boiled detective novels. He created the character of Sam Spade and is probably most well known for his book, The Maltese Falcon. Humphrey Bogart brought Sam Spade to life in the movie The Maltese Falcon. You can go into the lobby of the Flood building and see some very cool memorabilia, historical artifacts from the early 20th century, from the 1906 earthquake, some things that were used to build this, the old elevator, and they have a Maltese falcon, so it's pretty cool to go inside. This is Samuel's clock. This was bought by Al Samuels in 1915 and placed outside his jewelry store. Dashiell Hammett started working for Al Samuels as an advertising copy manager. He was writing advertising copy for the jewelry store. Samuel's jewelry was very successful, and the second floor crew was kind of family-like. They would go and hang out after work. I should say they were also very hard drinking, family-like. This is where Hammett met Peggy O'Toole, and she became the inspiration for Dinah Brand in Red Harvest, Bridget O'Shaughnessy in the Maltese Falcon, and he named a horse Peggy O'Toole in the Glass Key. Al Samuels and Dashiell Hammett became very good friends, and this clock is featured in at least one of Hammett's books. I couldn't find for sure which book it was, but Hammett's second book, The Dane's Curse, was dedicated to Samuels, and it opens with a hunt for 8 stolen diamonds. But this clock has stood watch. Get it? Stood watch? I'm sorry, I cracked myself up. This clock has stood watch over history. So that brings us to Powell Street and the end of my walk for the day. Thank you for watching.